Imagine waking up in Britain in 1942. The streetlights are blacked out, your car is up on blocks, and your children have never tasted a banana. Shop windows look full from a distance, but up close, the shelves are thin and guarded by coupons. You count sugar lumps, save bacon fat, and pencil a straight line down your calf to fake a pair of stockings. This isn't a survival challenge, it's daily life on the home front. Here are 20 everyday things that were rare or almost impossible to get in wartime Britain, and the clever workarounds people used to manage. Allowances and dates varied by year, but the struggle and the ingenuity were universal. Bananas and other tropical fruit. Bananas vanished almost overnight once German U-boats began strangling Atlantic shipping. Cargo space was prioritized for essentials and munitions, not perishables. A whole generation of children grew up without ever seeing one. When the first shipments returned in 1946, newsreels filmed kids trying bananas. For the very first time, families improvised mock banana by boiling and mashing parsnips, then adding banana essence and a little sugar to mimic the flavor. Pineapples and other tropical fruits were equally mythical, more storybook than supermarket fruit bowls that once signaled plenty became quiet reminders of the blockade. Oranges and lemons. Citrus was scarce, and when available, directed to children and expectant mothers under health priority schemes. For most households, vitamin C came from hedgerows rather than imports. People picked rose hips and boiled them into a bright orange syrup that sweetened porridge and protected against colds. Lemon juice in bottles occasionally appeared but was treasured, stretched into custards or diluted into faux lemonade for special days. Christmas stockings that once held oranges often held apples or nuts instead. If you were lucky, even a single orange could become the centerpiece of a holiday table. Sugar. Sugar was one of the earliest staples to be rationed and one of the hardest to stretch. Home bakers learned to sweeten cakes with grated carrots, mashed dates, or dried fruit syrups. Saccharin tablets stood in for sweetness in tea, and recipes for carrot fudge or wartime jam became family favorites. When fruit was available, the government encouraged preserving, but you had to plan carefully. Jam-making sugar required its own coupons. Birthdays still had cakes, but smaller, thinner, and often glazed with a glossy, sugary water icing rather than rich buttercream. Every spoonful was measured and meaningful, chocolate and sweets. For children and adults alike, a bar of chocolate turned into a once-in-a-while event. Confectionery required both sugar and cocoa, two imported ingredients under heavy strain. So sweets stayed rationed well after the war, finally ending in the early 1950s. Families hoarded coupons for birthdays, shared little squares on Sunday nights, and learned the art of making toffee from condensed milk. And a lot of patience, sweet shops still had queues, but the jars behind glass emptied fast and refilled slowly. The first day, sweets came off ration post-war, famously caused a run on candy shops that emptied shelves in hours. Tea is Britain's daily ritual, but wartime turned it into a carefully defended habit. With shipping routes disrupted, the weekly allowance was tiny, and households learned to brew weaker pots, sometimes reusing leaves to eke out a second cup. Teapots were warmed, cozies were used, and the leaves were measured with an accuracy that would impress any chemist. Strong tea for a visitor became a small act of generosity. The cuppa survived, but it required planning and a gentle hand on the teapot. Coffee. Proper roasted coffee was a luxury because beans were imported, and lower priority than staples. Many turned to chicory-based blends, roasted barley, or the iconic camp coffee, a sweet coffee and chicory essence mixed with hot water or milk. The result lacked the aroma of freshly ground beans, but delivered comfort and caffeine. Cafes served thin cups with a smile and a ration book on the counter. Anyone who managed to find real coffee saved it for the most special guests, or for a quiet moment of normality during an air raid lull. Eggs. Fresh eggs ebbed and flowed with feed shortages and transport problems. Backyard hens became prized, and urban gardens sprouted coops between the cabbages. The star of the era was National Dried Egg, powdered and shipped under Lend-Lease from the United States, each tin the equivalent of dozens of eggs. It made reliable cakes and omelettes if reconstituted carefully, though nobody mistook it for a just-laid egg. Children learned to look for the telltale bright yellow of powdered egg in school puddings. A fried egg for breakfast felt like a Sunday miracle. Butter and cooking fats. Butter rations were small, and every ounce counted. Housewives saved beef, dripping from roasts in jars, spreading it on toast with a pinch of salt, as a perfectly acceptable substitute for butter margarine, though not beloved, became a kitchen staple, and clever cooks folded it with a bit of butter to stretch the flavor. Pastry recipes were rewritten to use less fat. Scones and rock cakes took the place of rich pies. If a neighbor offered you a pat of butter, you noticed it was a gift in gold paper. Cheese. Cheese moved from variety to uniformity under the National Cheese Program, standardized, plain, and tightly controlled by weight. It was nourishing and reliable, if not exciting, and busy cooks learned to make a little go a long way. Graters became tools of thrift. A few shavings over potatoes, a handful into a macaroni bake, or melted into a thin sauce that stretched across a family's dinner. Strong-flavored cheeses appeared occasionally and disappeared just as fast. A proper cheddar sandwich could be the highlight of a week. Meat, including bacon and ham. Meat wasn't rationed by cut so much as by value, which meant a small budget in coupons each week. The nation developed a taste for offal, liver, kidneys, hearts, because it packed nutrition and was sometimes easier to find. Rabbit was a favorite because it wasn't rationed, and if you knew a country cousin, you were better off. Tins of Spam from the United States became icons of the era, diced into stews and fried into crispy breakfasts. Sunday roast didn't disappear, but the joint was smaller, the trimmings cleverer, and leftovers sacred fresh milk and cream. Milk supplies were prioritized for children, nursing mothers, and the sick. Adults learned to make do with evaporated milk, tinned cream, or national dried milk, which whisked into tea and custards reasonably well if you didn't look too closely. Skimmed milk appeared more often than whole, and proper cream became a rumor exchanged in queues. For puddings, custard powder and tinned milk stepped up again and again. A jug of fresh cream on a table felt almost indecently luxurious. Tinned fruit and salmon. Canned goods were controlled by a points system in addition to coupons, so a tin of peaches or salmon represented a serious decision. Families saved points for birthdays, Christmas, or visits from soldiers on leave. A single tin could anchor a party. Peach halves with evaporated milk, or salmon stretched into fish cakes with mashed potato and herbs from the Victory Garden. Labels were kept and repurposed, empty tins turned into planters or pencil pots. The glint of a can opener on a special day could make everyone smile. Petrol, gasoline. Private motoring almost stopped. After initial allocations vanished, only essential drivers, doctors, farmers, certain workers, received fuel. The question, is your journey really necessary, stared from posters on the station walls, and many cars were laid up, drained and perched on blocks to save precious tires. Buses and trains shouldered the load, and bicycles surged. Families rationed trips to the countryside to rare sunny days, and a lift in a petrol car turned into a story to tell the roads grew quieter. But the pavements bustled, tires and rubber goods. With access to Asian rubber cut off, Britain treated rubber like treasure. Soap and toiletries. Soap went on ration, and suddenly every sliver mattered. People bought soap savers, small mesh bags that let you lather the last scraps, and many households cut soap bars into measured portions to discourage overuse. Tooth powder often replaced paste, and shampoo days were spaced out, sometimes substituted with rinses of vinegar or beer. Perfume and fancy toiletries mostly vanished into the background, reserved for weddings and rare treats. Barbers and hairdressers worked miracles with limited supplies, and men guarded razor blades like currency, stropping them to extend life. Clothing and fabric. Clothes required coupons, and the CC41 utility scheme guaranteed fabrics and designs met strict standards. No extravagant pleats, minimal buttons, no wasted cloth. Make do and mend wasn't a slogan, it was a skill set. Darning mushrooms and sewing kits lived on kitchen tables. Old coats were turned inside out, men's suits cut down for boys, and worn sheets became night dresses. Knitting patterns flooded magazines, and wool salvaged from unraveled jumpers found new life in hats and socks. Behind every ration book and queue was a community learning thrift, patience, and ingenuity under pressure. Some shortages lifted quickly after 1945. Others lingered into the early 1950s, but the habits, saving soap ends, turning leftovers into tomorrow's supper, mending and sharing, left a mark that lasted a lifetime.